players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond Mark
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Pierre, McGuire, and myself, Jimmy Murphy here. And we've got another great guest lined up for you today. Pierre, Bruce Boudreau will be joining us shortly. And I've got a feeling might laugh a couple times or two while we're talking to Bruce. What do you think?
I hope so. I mean, that's what he's coming for. No, I'm just kidding. He's a very funny guy, very smart guy, excellent hockey person. You know, Jimmy, I was telling you yesterday and even today about how good a player Bruce was, and I don't think he ever gets enough credit. He's been obviously a very good coach, but he was just a tremendous, tremendous player. And, played on some amazing teams with the Toronto Marlboros and, Memorial Cup winning teams, played on some great teams in the minors. He had huge point totals, gigantic offensive point totals, and never really got enough acclaim for that, I don't believe, outside of Canada anyways.
Yeah, he did. And we're going to get him on. And he's actually messaging me right now. We're just going to figure something out there, but he will come on soon. But Pierre, I mean, yeah, you were showing me that. And also the thing that I noticed too, when we were going through his stats, was in a lot of those seasons where he's having a lot of points as well, he's getting a ton of PIMs. So he's doing everything down there. I mean, was he like the one of the early versions of a power forward or what?
No, not at his size. He was not a power forward, but he was ferocious on the puck, and from the blue line in, he was a demon for sure. Again, when he was near the end of his playing, I was just starting in pro hockey, so he was playing in the minor leagues then, and I was out scouting and doing a lot of work with our farm team. When I was in Pittsburgh, our farm team was actually in Muskegon, Michigan, and so the big rival, one of the big rivals for Muskegon is Fort Wayne, where Bruce obviously spent a lot of time. You heard Doc Emmerich talk about that, so I thought that was special. But what I remember the most about Bruce was, especially early in his career, he was a phenom as a junior player with the Toronto Marlboros. Their coach was George Armstrong. He had two pretty good players that were young kids that were playing there then by the name of the Howes, Mark and Marty Howe. That was a legendary story back then when two kids from Michigan, whose father was Gordy, would come up and play junior hockey in Toronto. But he had so many big-name teammates. Jimmy, I got to tell you, Mark Napier was a first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. John Tonelli, Mike McEwen, Mike Kitchen, who had a great career not only as a player but also as a coach. John Anderson, who had an unbelievably distinguished career as a player and a coach. Kevin Devine, who's still scouting out there now. But what I remember the most is the stories about Mark and Marty Howe and about Bob the Count Daly. Remember Bob the Count Daly?
Name, but enlighten me.
Yeah, he was a big, tall, rangy defenseman, and in Vancouver, and and then obviously in Philadelphia. But he got the nickname the Count because he had this thing that looked, dark black hair, and he just looked like Dracula. Yeah,
it's great. Actually, another thing I want to bring up with Bruce too, Pierre, is it's obviously part of a tragedy, but also too just that he knew these guys too. I knew Mark Bavis and Ace Bailey well, and for those that don't know out there, Bruce was supposed to be on that same flight that unfortunately
they were all going to LA. They were all going to LA for training camp, and I believe Bruce was running their farm team then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, coach of Manchester, and at the last minute, Andy Murray, then the head coach of the Kings, called a coaches meeting. So he asked the coaches to get out there a night early. And so Bruce ends up taking off on September 10th as opposed to the 11th, and he wasn't on that flight. And, so he basically, I was just reading about it before we got on. I mean, he says, yeah, Andy Murray basically saved my life. But yeah, I mean, they were great guys. And I would have, to be in the same room with Ace Bailey and Bruce. We talk about trading stories and making people laugh. I mean, I don't know how much you knew of Ace, Pierre, but he was a jokester. He was a prankster.
I'm going to, again, come clean on this one. I spent a lot of time with Ace on the road. He used to tell some great stories. Some of them I don't know if they were true or not, but they sure sounded great. And what I knew the Bavises really well because I had both of them at the Europa Cup when they were playing at Catholic Memorial way back when. And so I knew the brothers really well. But with Ace, it was funny because he was so tight with Wayne Gretzky, obviously, and he had amazing stories, and they were all great.
Yeah.
They were very flattering towards Gretz, but it was always about how great a player Wayne was. And I was like, thanks, Ace. You don't have to, tell me about how good he was. I think I saw the movie enough and coach when he was playing. So, but no, the one thing I can tell you about Bruce that really stands out to me is the commitment to the game. Totally committed. I mean, to be an elite junior player when he was on the team that he was, and then his first pro team was in Johnstown, the Johnstown Jets. People don't know that. It's not like he just went from playing in Toronto and all of a sudden ended up in the NHL.
Yeah.
It was tough. I mean, he didn't have an easy way to go, and he could have quit many times and he chose not to. And I have so much respect for people that do that in the game. It's very flattering to their character, and Bruce deserves that a lot. His character is unreproachable.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I've talked to players that play for him. They said he's hard, but he's fair, and if he senses that respect that he has for the game in you, the player, then you're going to be okay. That's all he wants to see there, and he appreciates that. So, I think I'd love to talk to him about maybe some players that kind of potentially maybe reminded him of himself and the journey he had been through. Because we've seen a couple guys that have gone through that, obviously, in the league. And I'll tell you, though, I just remember, and I was telling you off air earlier today, I was looking for some clips, couldn't really find many great ones. But, there was that. We can't play it. There was just too many special words, we'll put it that way. But that clip from the Road to the Winter Classic, and this is in the heyday of that show, Pierre. Remember? I mean, I think they had just started, actually, and you worked on it. And he comes in there after they give up. He's coaching the Capitals, and he comes in after they give up a goal at the end of a period, and they're in the midst of a losing streak. It appeared, and he just gives it to them, And it was great. And he just walks out of the room, that was it. He wasn't taking. He's like, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna get it off my chest. Here you go. You do what you may with it. And of course, they went out and tied the game, but it was cool. It was fun to see. And I wonder now, Pierre, and that's not that long ago. It's 2012. I know it's 12 years, but that's not that long. But it's amazing how much the game has changed. It would a speech like that work? Where you're dropping F-bomb after F-bomb and you're just saying you guys aren't trying. You're pathetic out there right now. Can that still work in the game today?
Yeah, 100% it does. Yeah, and I'll give you an example. Because I was watching the game and I was texting you. The Ottawa Senators were down 3-0 to the Nashville Predators on Monday night, and they looked bad. They didn't look a little bit bad. They looked real bad. And I know that Parker Kelly was one of the guys that stood up in the room, and I've known, again, Parker played for a real good friend of mine, Mark Habscheid, out in the Western Hockey League.
Mark.
Habby used to tell me all the time, how much of a character person Parker was, and I got to know Parker really well when he was playing for Troy Mann, one of Bruce Boudreau's former players down in Biloxi, Mississippi. And, I heard that, and you asked me about, can those kinds of talks work? The answer is yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. As mad as Parker Kelly may have been in that Ottawa Senators dressing room, Jacques Martin was equally upset. And it takes a lot to get Jacques mad.
Yeah.
So he clearly got their attention because he came back and won the game 4-3 in overtime on a Claude Giroux overtime winning goal. But, Jimmy, it works. It just can't work every day.
Right.
And that's where the fine line has to be drawn. I'll give you an example. A college coach called me this morning, and he was asking me what I thought about what he did yesterday. I said, well, what'd you do? I wasn't there. And he says, I was so upset with our guys that I threw them off the ice. And then I told my assistants to bring them back on about 10 minutes later. I go, how'd it work? He goes, our practice was much better. He goes, do you think that's a good idea? I said, oh, yeah. You can't do it more than 3 times in a season. But, yeah, it's a good idea. Don't worry. Nobody got hurt.
All right. Well, one man, as we said, who has had to use those speeches, and they worked, join us right now, a longtime NHL coach, and you can find him now on the NHL Network doing his analysis there. And that's Bruce Boudreau joining us here on the Eye Test. Oh, we don't get your sound, Bruce. Let's see. He's looking dapper, though. I'll tell you that.
He's ready to work.
Ay, shite.
He's
We'll
on
get him. We'll get him.
slowly but surely.
Yep. Try the internal volume, Bruce, if you could.
He's trying everything. We'll get it. Don't worry. We'll get it.
We'll get him. No worries.
Well, I think I've seen that hotel room before. I believe that's in Secaucus, New Jersey.
I actually think I've stayed there as well, Pierre.
Rob Rossi does such a good job covering the Pittsburgh Penguins. And on Monday, actually it was last week, he called me up and said, "Would you give me an interview on Jaromir Jagr?" I said, "It'd be an honor."
Oh, great.
Being around him. And so I did the interview on Monday. And one of the stories I told him was one of the coolest things when our Jaromir was 18 and 19, we used to play the Devils a ton. And sometimes even when we play the Rangers, we'd stay in New Jersey. We'd stay in Secaucus, New Jersey, Jimmy. And one time I was going out for dinner with some friends, and they picked me up, and we were driving. I see this big, robust guy walking with a cap on, a winter cap. And it's Jaromir Jagr walking by himself with rosy cheeks, eating a Kit Kat, a giant Kit Kat chocolate bar. And nobody knew who he was except for me, who was one of the coaches. And I'm watching this happen. I'm going, that could never happen today. He could never walk down the street like that. So anyways,
yeah. Look, when is that, by the way, that they're honoring him?
it's in February. It's near the end of February, I believe.
Okay, so it's coming up. Nice.
Just before Mario Lemieux has his fantasy camp in Pittsburgh, which
you'll be at.
I'm excited to be at. Yeah.
Bring some guests in from that.
Whenever you get that invitation, it's always really nice to be included.
Yeah.
Mario's, I can tell you, Jimmy, I know Wayne has one, and I know other guys around the league have their. I'm sure Mark Messier has one too, and I'm sure they're unbelievable. The one thing I know about Mario's camp, he told me this last. Treat the guys like they're pro players. Bring them in and treat them like they're pros, and they do. And you know, working with Brian Trottier there and Eddie Johnston, and you look at Joey Mullen and all. We've lost, Jimmy. I got to tell you this. We've lost a couple guys to the NHL. Mark Recchi's coaching in Columbus, and Paul Coffey's coaching in Edmonton. They were on our coaching staff last year. On. So we're a farm team now. The Mario Lemieux fantasy camp is a farm team. That's what we are. We need Boudreau. Boudreau's got to come in. We'll bring Bruce in.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. And I'd love to get some guests on from that as well, Pierre. We'll see if we can drag some guys on.
We'll have some good guests. You may even be able to get one guy in particular that I know you want.
Yes.
Number 66 there.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Just before we're trying to work on Bruce right now. We'll get him in a second. But staying on Jagr, Pierre, what took so long for this to happen in Pittsburgh? I mean,
first he's still playing. And, you know, you look at the amount of teams that he played on. You know, after he left Pittsburgh, yes, there was Washington, there was New York, there was there was Boston, there was Calgary, there was New Jersey. I mean, he played in a lot of plus, people forget he played in Omsk. He was in Omsk for 2 years over in the eastern part of Russia. And, you know, I've been to Omsk, and I can tell you, Jimmy, it's about a 7.5 hour plane ride from Moscow. It's not like it's around the corner.
Really fun.
So, and I think Jaromir really got comfortable going back home to Kladno, owning the team, presiding over the team, being the general manager, being the coach, also playing. Nice. I think there was a lot, and then ownership changes obviously in Pittsburgh, so there's a lot that goes into it.
It's great to see. What was it like? We're still waiting on Bruce there. What was it like when he got to Pittsburgh? Just the mania, so to speak, around him when he arrived.
It was pretty significant, but you have to remember back then Pittsburgh was a hockey town, but it also was, and it still is, a huge football town. Yeah, and the Steelers were unbelievably good back when Jaromir first turned pro. But the guy that never gets enough credit for the Jaromir Jagr situation is Craig Patrick. Jaromir slipped to 5. There's no other way to describe it. You know, Owen Nolan went 2, Peter Nedved went, Peter Nedved went 2, Keith Primo went 3, Mike Ricci went 4, and Jaromir Jagr went 5. So you do that draft again today, and knowing what you know now, and you say there's no way Jagr goes at 5, but he went at 5 because a lot of teams didn't think he would come out. Whereas you knew Nolan was going to play right away. You knew that Nedved was going to play right away. You knew that Primo had a real good chance to play right away. And you knew Ricci was going to play right away. So everybody wanted players that could play right away. If you drafted Yager, you knew he could play, but could you get him out? Craig Patrick's experience from the 1980 Olympic team and the connections that he made from that experience opened up a huge pathway to get Yarmer out of it. It was Czechoslovakia then. It wasn't Czechia like it is now. It was Czechoslovakia.
Yep. Where's Craig right now, Pierre?
Craig's in Pittsburgh. He'll be at the camp. He's at Mario's
Okay.
camp. Yeah, he's there. He's good.
But he's not working anywhere in the game right now.
Not right now, no. Unless he's doing some work for the Penguins. I don't think he is, He was doing some work for Buffalo for a while when Timmy Murray was there as a general manager, and then he went back to Pittsburgh. But I'm not sure if Craig's working right now.
I feel like he doesn't get enough credit. I don't know. Maybe it's just because
that's one of the things I told Rob Rossi when I did the interview. I said, there's so many people, so many moving parts on Yarmer, but the man that really had the vision to make it all work was Craig. He really was a visionary on that. And he was the architect. I know people like to call Bill Torrey the architect for what he did on Long Island, and justifiably so. Craig Patrick was every bit the architect in Pittsburgh. I mean, people need to know that team that he inherited in 1990 missed the playoffs in the last day of the year. Uwe Krupp scored a CNI shot from the blue line for the Buffalo Sabres. It knocked Pittsburgh out. And then Craig brought in the late Bob Johnson, Scotty Bowman, Barry Smith, and myself. And it started, because of Craig's vision, everything started to change there.
I hear you. Before we leave that and hopefully get to Bruce here, just talking about that generation of Penguins. Now, I know you brought up Brian Trottier a lot, Pierre, but what other guys maybe that flew under the radar more league-wide that fans didn't know about were real instrumental in making that a dynasty?
Well, Phil Bork was a big part of it. Bobby Airy was the character guys on our team, players that Bruce really liked. Our character players, Jay Caulfield, guys that would fight for the team, not for themselves. They really mattered. Troy Loney was another one. It was hard. After we won the Cup in '92, people forget this. Ottawa and Tampa came into the league. So we had, right after we won the Cup, we had to expose players in the waiver draft. It was really hard. Scotty and I went to the waiver draft in Montreal because we knew we were going to lose players. And it was really tough. I mean, we won the Cup. It was a quick transition. I'm going to say it was like 4 or 5 days, and we were up in Montreal for the draft, and we lost. So there were some hard feelings.
Yeah,
I felt bad for the players, and the players were kind of upset that they had been exposed.
Yeah,
and then it wasn't long after Anaheim came into the league, and then all of a sudden you lose guys. I mean, it's just the reality of expansion. It's kind of tough.
Yeah, I mean, that had to be tough. I'll tell you. Well, we are still trying to get Bruce here. I apologize to our viewers. We'll get him on, and we're getting a word from the production right now.
So just get him on the phone. We'll be good.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're going to get him on the phone call. We'll go old school. I don't mind that at all.
Hey, listen, we started that way with Doc Emmerich, and eventually we got him on camera, and he was showing us his Michigan swag.
Yeah, that's great. Remember that?
Michigan swag.
And actually, I'm seeing some comments here just about when we get Bruce on, and somebody just reminded me too. I mean, he was coaching in the Spengler Cup. Totally forgot that Bruce was over there. So maybe get his take on it.
He played over there too. I think Bruce played in Germany, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yeah. Good stuff. All right. So I think we got him now here. Bruce, you there?
Finally, I can hear you guys. I feel like an idiot, but I can hear you.
It's not your fault, my friend. Trust me. The more technology we get, the worse it gets, is my opinion, Bruce. I don't know about you, but.
Well, I mean, it's going 100 miles an hour, and I'm still riding a horse.
I hear you. Well, welcome to the eye test. Jimmy Murphy, Pierre McGuire here, of course, with you. Bruce, how's everything going? How's life?
You know what? I mean, I think it's going pretty good. I mean, I think I still wish I was like everybody else, still doing what we used to do and love. But I mean, I'm talking to people about hockey a lot, so that's good. I'm on the NHL Network like today and yesterday, and I usually do about 5 or 6 days a month. I do a lot of XM radio, and I have a junior team in Hershey.
That's right.
Or it's like probably junior B, probably, if we were looking at it right. But we have the 8 French young men on our team, and we're invading Quebec to get good players, and we're doing pretty good. So it's keep myself pretty busy.
Good stuff.
Bruce, the first time I ever heard your name, I was a young kid growing up in Montreal, and you were playing for the Toronto Marlboros, and you had a legendary coach, George Armstrong, that was part of the last Stanley Cup winning team for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I always wanted to ask you this. Over all the years I've known you and coached against you and broadcast your games, where did your passion for hockey come from? Because you are an addict.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Pierre. I get mad at myself because all I do is watch hockey. I'm going when there's no hockey, like the last couple of days when we're going near the All-Star break, I'm going crazy. But I mean, it started when I was, my dad built a rink in the backyard when I was about 3, and I started skating, and I opened. I remember we were the first guys on the ice in 1959 at a legendary arena in Toronto called George Bell Arena.
Yep.
And just started playing every chance I could get. Go to in the backyard every day. Anybody that had a backyard rink. And I followed the Leafs on every radio broadcast. And back in the day, it didn't come on till 8:00, so you missed the first period. But you listen to it and then watch the games. And everything I did was about hockey. And I'll tell you a quick thing, because my dad always used to mention this. He asked me at 5 years old or 6 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a hockey player. And I never strayed from that ever. There was never anything that came in number 2. It was just hockey. And so, unfortunately or fortunately, I mean, it's been good fortune to me, but I mean, it's the passion I've had, and it'll probably be there till the day I die.
God bless. God bless. So let me ask you, when you're a player, you go through so many teams, and you're staying in a game. I imagine, obviously, that passion is what got you through, eh, Bruce?
Yeah, and the the passion and the belief that miracles happen. And what I mean by that is, and Pierre, you will remember a guy by the name of Connie Madigan.
100%. Madigan. Yep.
When he started with the St. Louis Blues. And once I became like what you would call a full-time minor league guy, I kept thinking he was the guy that I kept thinking. He was 38 and he made the St. Louis Blues. So when I'm playing at 36 and 37, I still had the dream of playing in the NHL. And I mean, I did a lot. It was a lot of, wishing and hoping. But, if you have a dream and you believe it can happen, sometimes it can. And I never wanted to give up the hope or the dream. It's probably the same way now as I watch every game and I'm saying, well, you know what? Maybe there's still a chance at my ripe old age that somebody will call me to coach again, and I'd jump at it. That's why I jumped at the Spangler Cup and thought it was a great experience. And I never have told anybody that I want to retire, because I don't. There's nothing else I'd rather do than be involved in hockey.
Jimmy, you know what's amazing about Bruce? So he's a kid that grows up in Toronto, has this passion for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm a kid that grows up in Montreal. I got this huge passion for the Montreal Canadiens. But I didn't get drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. Bruce actually got drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he was also drafted by the Minnesota Fighting Saints in the World Hockey Association.
Right.
But he played for the Marlboros. So, Bruce, you can tell our listeners, because a lot of them still don't have a recollection of what the Marlboros were, how big a deal it was to play for the Toronto Marlies when you played junior hockey for them.
Well, in the middle 70s, when I played, the Toronto Maple Leafs owned everything on Saturday. And, they would get all the TVs, the print, everything else in the papers. But we had the same reporters, Frank Orr, and the Sun, John Iaboni, and the Globe and Mails, I forget his name. They were all at our games on Sunday. So we owned Sunday. So we had headlines in the front page of all the papers at the beginning of the week. The Leafs had it all at the end of the week. And we would routinely draw over 10 to 15,000 people on Sunday afternoons at Marley games. and the hockey was outstanding. And not that it's not outstanding now, but back then you didn't get drafted till you were 21. So if you can picture, like when we were playing in the playoffs my first year, and Ottawa had Dennis Potvin and Ian Turnbull, they would be in their third and fourth year in the NHL. If you can picture some of these young players now being in their third and fourth year playing in the NHL, how good the league was, because every team had their superstars and players like that. So it was a great league, and we got an awful lot of press, and that's probably why I didn't go to high school, even though I was in high school.
But you knew how to read the newspapers. I knew that. You knew how to read the newspapers. What was it like being around Mark and Marty Howe, and did Gordy ever show up for those Marlboro practices or games when you were playing there?
When they played in Toronto, Detroit would play in Toronto on Saturday nights, and we'd play Sunday. Gordy always stayed behind it to watch those guys. And first of all, they were great guys, and we all lived in the same area. Mark picked me up for practice every day. We became extremely good friends. But I'll never forget this one time. I got hit in the Sunday game, and I don't know, and I stayed on the ice. The trainer had to come down, and he took me to the dressing room, and I saw him coming down the stairs. It was Gordy, and he went right into the dressing room with me, and he gave me words. Back then, I was still 17, and he gave me advice that I'd never forgotten, and I used it till the last day I quit. He said, "Never stay on the ice, son." He said, "Don't ever give the other team the satisfaction of knowing they hurt you. So you do whatever you have to do to get off that ice, no matter how hurt you are." And he looked at me in the eye, and and I went, "Oh my God!" And it just stayed with me forever.
Yeah. I wish people heeded that advice today, but that's a whole other story. But Bruce, I want to ask you. So you go on through your hockey career. Was there a certain point where you started to maybe think, "Hey, maybe I'll get into some coaching when this is done"? Was there something that kind of propelled that, or did it just sort of organically happen?
No, you know what? I think I was probably now, say, 27 years old, and I'm still part of the Leaf organization in St. Catharines, and I became the player assistant coach. And my thought always was, if I couldn't play, and then I would end up coaching. And I did an article in the Sun, and Glenn Sonmore's sister was the reporter, and it sort of just was coming on how much I would like to stay in and coach, and I had so many good coaches to learn by up to that date that, it was just something that I couldn't see myself not being involved in hockey. And it seemed like the quick transformation from a player to a coach. And I didn't know how difficult it was going to be at the time or what have you, but it was something that at an early age, once I knew I wasn't going to be in the NHL full time, that I said I was going to be a coach at some point.
Pierre?
One of the guys that Bruce played with the Marlboros was a guy by the name of Bob the Count Daly. Bruce, any good Count stories?
Well, I knew at the time he was 6'5" and he was big, and no one, you know what? We didn't have a team that fought, but nobody would want to fight when we had guys like him and Glenn Goldup on the team, and big guys like that. But no real stories except that he was a great leader. He was our captain that year, and he went on to great years in Philadelphia. But always remember him as a protector. He wasn't overly fast, but back in that day, being his size, he would sort of just command the room, and that's pretty, like what I remember of him as. I was just a young 17-year-old. He was 21, and I would just look up to him, and whatever he wanted from me, he got. So, I think I was more scared of him than anything else, but he was a great leader for us.
Jimmy, one of the guys that Bruce talked about, Glenn Goldup, was a first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens, and that's what they drafted for, the physicality part. But Bruce, there was another player that I remember playing, because I learned this way back when, but John Anderson, who I have so much respect for as as a player and as a coach. And I know you were teammates with him for a long time. What about John? Like, what were your takes on John early on? He was such a good goal scorer, kind of like you.
Well, he was fabulous. I mean, we became best friends. We still are to this day. But he's a hockey junkie as well. And when he got called up, he was playing junior B when my first year junior A. He became a junior A player the next year. But he was like just in awe too. Like, I mean, everything in his world was hockey. We would play ball hockey in the summer. We were pretty nerdy, both of us at the time. And all we would do would be talking hockey. And the first chance I got for him to be my assistant coach in Minnesota, I jumped at it and had him as an assistant coach, and he did a great job, quite frankly. And but they changed GMs, and the GM wanted his guy in there. So unfortunately, John was at the end of his contract, and that was the end of that. But the one good story, when John was in Hartford and near the end of his career in Hartford, he went to Europe and he got sent down. He was going to retire because he was mad about the game, and I convinced him to come to Fort Wayne to play with me. And I said, John, just come, we'll have a great season, we'll have fun, because I wanted him not to leave the game being bitter at the game. And he came, and he had an incredible year. He went on to be the MVP of the American Hockey League and played 4 or 5 more years before he got into a great coaching career.
Jimmy, remember Doc Emmerich, how much he was talking about Bruce Boudreau?
Yeah.
So go at it with Bruce on Fort Wayne, because obviously he's an iconic player there, and his son actually coached there as well. So it's kind of a neat story with Fort Wayne and the Boudreau family.
Oh, yeah. Ben coached there, won a championship. Doc, I talked to Doc last week, and he was telling me about Fort Wayne's newest acquisition. And I mean, he still loves Fort Wayne. Still the best play-by-play guy, I think, this side of Danny Gallivan that you'll ever hear. And I still think he could do games. If they ever went to Port Huron and had an NHL team, he'd be the broadcaster for that.
Yeah. Yes, he would.
Sure. Hey, I want to ask Bruce, those times when you're in, those years in Fort Wayne, I was looking at your stats. Now you got 120 points one year, 84 the other. But next to those 120 points, you had 111 PIMs, and next to the 84, you had 100 PIMs. So I'm wondering, like, if you could describe for our viewers who maybe weren't aware of you as a player, what was your style as a player? Because I said, geez, he sounds like a prototypical power forward, but Pierre said, no, you were more ferocious. So how would you describe that, your style at that point?
Well, I was a pretty offensive player, but when I got older, those 2 years, there was 1 year in between in Fort Wayne there that I had 109 points, just threw that in there. But I mean, 84 points was my last year. And those 2 years, I just got cranky. Like, I mean, when you get 37 and 38 years old and you're playing and people are still taking runs at you, you get cranky and you slash back and you hit back. I remember on that 111, I'd never had 100 minutes in penalties, and we played Muskegon in our last game. And Jock Callender, who Pierre will remember, always was a big 6'4", but a great scorer as well. He would spear me and do everything. So the last, he gave me a cross check from behind. I went into the board and I got up. I was so mad, and I just took a 2-hander at him. And then he said, "You want to go?" And so all I did was spear him right in the gut, and my stick broke. And I went, "Uh-oh!" Like, now I got to fight, right? So I don't want to fight. But I mean, I ended up getting 2 5-minute majors, a 10 in a game, and that put me over 111.
Perfect.
I'm so happy in the dressing room, because I'd never had 100 minutes in penalties. I couldn't care about the scoring, but it was the 100 minutes in penalties that made me feel good.
By the way, Jimmy, Jock Callender, one of the nicest guys I've ever had a chance to be around as a coach.
Yeah.
And he was a big part of our 92 Stanley Cup winning team in Pittsburgh. People forget that. We had a lot of injuries after the second round with the Rangers, and Jocko came up and did a really good job. I'll always remember that, and the way he carried himself was phenomenal around those big players. You know, Bruce is talking about penalty minutes, guys. I have to tell you this, Jimmy, and Bruce will know exactly where I'm going. When he coached in Mississippi, there was a guy there by the name of Kevin Evans. I think Bruce brought him in. The year that I coached in Baton Rouge, I think we played Bruce's team 16 or 18 times. Kevin Evans was about as tough as anybody you'd ever see. Pound for pound, he reminded me of Robbie DeMaio, who was a really tough guy.
Okay.
Kevin Evans had 505 penalty minutes the year that he played for Bruce when I was in Baton Rouge. Bruce, right?
Yes, he was the first guy I signed, and I'll tell you a quick story about that. Is because when I took the job in Mississippi, I looked at the Southern Corridor, and Lafayette had nothing but tough guys, and you guys in Baton Rouge had to have tough guys. I'm saying, I got to get a tough team here, or we're not going to last. And Kevin Evans, I knew the family. I played with Paul. Dougie was in St. Louis, and knew Kevin really well. I knew he was near the end of his career, and I thought, well, I'm going to get him as a player assistant coach. And I mean, he's only 5'9", 165 pounds, but I would put him against anybody in a fight because he was one of those guys that never stopped till he was dead or he killed you.
So there's a second part to this story because, again, when you play a team like 16 or 18 times in a season, there's a lot of bad blood. Yeah. And we had a kid by the name of Shane Knighty, who was a real young player from Saskatchewan. So I actually grew up in Manitoba, played in Saskatchewan. So I said to Shane, we were going in to play Bruce's team. I said, listen, they got a guy there who's a professional fighter. His name's Kevin Evans, and he's really good at it. You don't go near him. Understand? You don't go near him. And Evans was obviously knows he's going to get after this kid. And he's coming off the ice frustrated. I see Knighty coming off. I said, I'll set the table for you. Trust me on this. If you really want to fight him, don't do it till I tell you it's a good to go. So I waited till Evans was at the end of a shift, and I looked at one of the defenders. I said, get off now. And I put 90 on me, got him at the end of a shift.
Oh, boy.
And that was, I think, the last game Shane ever played in the East Coast League. He got called up to Grand Rapids, which wasn't even part of our organization. We let him go and eventually made it to a very prosperous and successful NHL career. But I remember that game in particular because Kevin Evans, to me, personified with toughness and teamwork, and a coach would love a player like that, wouldn't they, Bruce?
Absolutely. I mean, he couldn't skate, but he was good with the puck. But he's one of those guys that you look at and you want to go to war with, or you want to go to battle with, because he's going to do whatever it takes. NHL teams, we had it in Tiger Williams, we had it in Montreal, had half a dozen of those players. Dougie Riseborough, I remember. You want to go to war with these guys because they're not going to quit until they win. And Kevin was like that very much.
Agreed.
Bruce, so let's get, when you first start coaching the NHL, if you could just take us back to that. I mean, how did you end up landing that first job?
Well, it was by good fortune that our parent club was really bad in Washington. And we had won the Calder Cup 2 years previous, and then the year before we had gone to the finals. And I knew George McPhee was he liked what I did behind the bench. And Washington had started out, they were 6-15-2, I think, and I got the call at 6:30 in the morning, and I was just supposed to go there for the weekend. And I'm finding this out years later. I mean, because Dale Hunter was the guy that they were gonna hire, but he said he was coaching in London at the time,
right,
in junior, and he had said, "Hey, listen, we got important games this weekend. Do you mind if I wait till the weekend's over?" So they called me up, and we went in Philadelphia. We won that game. Then we won another game, and then Dale said, "I got one real big game coming up. Can you wait one more?" We won that game, and then George said, "Why don't we just hold off a little bit, Dale? This seems to be going pretty good right now." And that's how it got started. I could have been finished in a weekend, or it's the way, the luck of the draw, and the players responded really well to me at that time, and we had a great year.
You had a great player too by the name of Alexander Ovechkin. What was it like to manage his minutes?
I mean, you know what? It sort of was sort of easy because, I mean, quite frankly, he was an easy guy to deal with, and he didn't kill penalties. And I mean, he would go out there. The biggest problem sometimes Alex would have a tendency, especially when he was young, is to stay on a little longer than you would like him to, because the other two guys on the line had changed and Alex is still out there. So you had to bring him in and give him come on over here, Alex. Can you shorten your shifts a little bit? But it was, at that time, I learned when you're scoring 65 goals, then, you can stay out a little longer. And that's where he started staying out for the whole power play.
Jeez.
And he did that. And, and it's continued 18 years later. He's still staying out 2 minutes for the power play.
Bruce, can he break Gretzky's record without Nick Backstrom?
I think they got to, you know what, every good winger, every good goal scorer has a centerman that can feed you the puck. And right now, Washington doesn't. That's why they're the lowest scoring team, or the second behind Chicago in the NHL is not getting goals. So unless they find somebody in a hurry, he's got maybe 3 years maximum left in his body, I think, to play. And Dylan Strome isn't the guy that's gonna get him those goals. I mean, he's got 9 now. I think in the last 34 games or so that Washington has, I mean, he's got to get 16 goals this year in that short amount of time to get to 25 to think he's able to break the record, because it's going to take another 2 years at that rate to go break the record. If he stays and hovers around 14 or 15 for the year, my biggest fear is that, initially I thought he would stay until he broke it, but he's a really proud man. I mean, I remember Wayne Gretzky only got 9 goals in his last year, Pierre, as you remember, and that sort of killed him because he wasn't being able to do the things that he has done his whole life, and and when he couldn't do that, that's pretty frustrating for a player. So I worry if that's what's going to happen to Alex.
By the way, Jimmy, I completely agree with the coach on that. And I know I shared it with you before, and I mean this sincerely. It's not a knock on Alex. It's when you don't have that elite playmaking center like Nicky Backstrom was, and I don't know if he'll be back playing again. That's why I use the past tense. That's a problem. And they don't have a centerman that can do what Backstrom can do. And Bruce coached him. He knows.
Yeah.
I agree with the coach on that 100%.
Well, yeah. I mean, guys, I think, watching the Bruins growing up, and I always wonder, what would have happened, especially when Neely got into those years where he was battling the injuries, yet still scoring. He doesn't do that without Adam Oates coming in to replace Craig Janey. It just doesn't happen. So, I mean, you're absolutely right, guys, that you need that. Coach, I want to ask you what it was like to be part of the early days and sort of the advent of the Sid Ovi rivalry, and just, obviously Pierre knows from a broadcasting standpoint what that did for the game, but what was it like being on the ice, on the bench for that rivalry as it developed?
Well, you know what, I can tell you the one thing, Pierre was in the middle of the bench almost every game we played.
That's right.
And he was seeing it firsthand when those two guys would come back to the bench and they'd be swearing at each other. And there was no love lost. And they're both great guys, but the competitiveness in both of these guys was incredible. And I mean, they would never talk. Alex would never talk about it, but you could see him go on the ice, especially. And I know Pierre will remember this, that 7-game series we had against Pittsburgh in round 2 in 2008, I think, when the year they won the cup.
Wow.
They beat us in 7, and they both got a hat trick in game 2. Mm-hmm. But I mean, just the look in both of their eyes, like I used to see it in Sydney coming over, and when I would look down the bench and Alex wanted to go, he never wanted to come off, but I mean, he would just he'd give you that look, and you're going, I gotta get out there, and the intensity was incredible, and watching those guys go was amazing. And you know what, Pierre, I used to love watching him more when we played in Montreal, because he seemed to love Montreal. Right. And I mean, I remember one game, Mike Komisarek was put on as the guy that was going to shadow Alex as a defenseman, and Alex scored 4 goals and had 5 points. And Commissar by the third period couldn't wait to get off the ice because every time Alex would come down, he'd make him look bad. But I mean, those are the kind of things that when I'm really done with this game, that I'll just look back and just, try to find video of Alex doing what he did, because it was fun to watch, and it was especially fun when him and Sidney got together and they played against each other, because the whole hockey world was watching those two young 20-something-year-old guys.
What an awesome answer. What an awesome answer to a great question. So, Coach, I got to ask you this one. Why was there such animosity between Ovechkin and Malkin? Because it looked like physically Ovechkin wanted to obliterate Malkin every single time they had a chance to play against each other.
Well, at that time, I mean, they'd both go home in the summer, and Alex wanted to be the number one Russian hockey player in the world. Mm-hmm. Malkin was, I think, a second pick in the draft or third pick.
No, second.
He wanted to be the best young player in the league. And so, I mean, when they hit each other or when they were playing against each other, they would run. And you know this just as well as I do. They would try to kill each other. Now they're best friends, but I mean, back in the day, they wanted to be known as the best Russian hockey player on the planet.
Good stuff. Just go ahead, Pierre.
Yeah, I can tell you right now what the coach said is spot on. I mean, I did most of those games with Doc Emmerich, and first it was with John Davidson and then with Eddie Olczyk. And I can tell you, everybody focused on Crosby and Ovechkin, but I'm telling you, the barbaric stuff was Ovechkin and Malkin.
Yeah.
And then when Tommy Wilson joined the party, it became a little bit different for everybody. That's another story for another.
There was a new sheriff in town.
Yeah.
Tommy came on board. There was a new sheriff for sure.
Yeah, and just going back to that, I mean, to that rivalry there, I mean, you guys know that was a very questionable time in the history of the NHL. They're coming out of that lockout there. And I almost feel like, as you guys were talking there, I don't know why it went through my head, but I just thought to, the NBA, when Bird and Magic kind of saved the NBA, and you look at what those guys did at that time for the NHL, I think it's a legit comparable. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy, because I
am, but that's another story. But but no, you know what I mean, Coach? I mean, it was like the NHL really needed that at that time, and you could tell how much the league sort of fast forwarded a bit to where they needed to be, because they had those two guys, and even you mentioned Malkin as well, Pierre. They carried the league for a good 3 to 4 years.
I can agree with you, and I'll tell you, when the NBA had Bird and Magic, that was the worst rating period before that the NBA ever had, and they made the league. And when Ovechkin and Crosby came into the league, I mean, hockey is much further down the scale than basketball is. But if they didn't have those guys, and for the American TV audience before Wayne went to LA, I mean, who knows if hockey would have made it in the States, or if they would have had that expansion. But when these guys came in, and all the reporters and the media people, it doesn't matter what sport you're talking about, would harness or get focused on that game, and they would report it. Even on like NBC and CBS and ABC, they would report these things, and SportsCenter would be leading with that when they never lead with hockey ever. So to answer your question, I would think that, yes, they were a big portion of why hockey grew. And I mean, we all give Wayne the credit, but I mean, these two guys, they are also right in there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Pierre?
Your coach is talking about growing the game. So I'm watching Mason Lowry play for the Boston Bruins. He's the first Louisiana-born player ever to play in the National Hockey League. He was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And Coach Boudreau coached a guy by the name of Simon Olivier in Mississippi, and his son Matthew plays for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Bruce, you're growing the game all over the place.
There you go.
It's you know what? I still get calls in Mississippi. We've had reunions down there from our championship team. Friends still call me and they're saying, "Well, big game tonight. Who's going to win? We're going to go on these betting sites." And I'm going, "You're on your own. I know nothing." And you know what? And another thing about Lori, his dad coached in Baton Rouge.
Good.
Yeah.
Dave Lori, and then he coached in Reading in the East Coast League, and to see his son there, that's amazing how you even get minor hockey. Quite frankly, back in those days when there was maybe one arena in every town, every big town like Baton Rouge or Lafayette or New Orleans or Biloxi, there wasn't a lot of rinks that you could go to and play.
Yeah.
You know, Jimmy, they had a thing when Bruce was there and I was there, and Doug Shedden was coaching in Lafayette, Louisiana. So when the three of us were there, they had a thing called the Atchafalaya Cup, and it was sponsored by a big bank in the South, a Louisiana bank, I think. And our team ended up winning the Atchafalaya Cup. But here's what I would tell you. After they won it, and, you know, I've been fortunate enough to be around Stanley Cup winning teams. Like Coach was around Memorial Cup winning teams and championship teams. So I can tell you, winning that Atchafalaya Cup meant as much to our players as it did for the guys in Pittsburgh when we won the Stanley Cup. I'm just telling you. And I think little things like that, like when Bruce's team won in Mississippi, that helped hockey in the South, like that part of the South. And when we won that Atchafalaya Cup, it helped. And, you know, Bruce talked about at the beginning, Shedden's teams in Lafayette. You know, Dan O'Rourke, the official in the NHL?
Yeah.
He played on that team.
Oh, wow. Nice. Good
They,
stuff.
they had a wagon over there. They would get 9,000 people a night, and it was like bedlam when you went in there.
You know what? Quick story, when Dan first got to the NHL and I was there, I wasn't there much before him, but I mean, I got there and we got into a screaming match at the bench. I think it was in LA. And I said to him, I said, "You're still pissed because we beat you. And that's why you're giving me the raw end of this deal. So get over it." I would be yelling at him. I knew he was a player, and he was mad at our team for beating him. And we sent the guy out one night. And this guy, and Pierre will remember him. His name was Roger Maxwell, and he was just a big, tough dude. And I told him before the game, I said, "I don't know who you're going to fight tonight, but I mean, you don't fight to hurt. I mean, if you're going to survive in this world, you better fight. If you're going to fight all the time, you better fight to hurt the guy and not just fight to hold him up." And he fought Dan O'Rourke, and he put him in the infirmary type thing. And he came to me after that fight. He didn't even go to the penalty box. Came right over the bench. He says, "Is that better, Coach?" I was so scared. I said, "Yes, Roger, that was better."
Bruce, I want you to know before we let you go here too, we got a couple folks from Vancouver over in our chat room here, but they just wanted me to let you know how much they loved you there. And I guess that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask. I know it didn't end the way you wanted there, but what did it mean to you to get the outpouring of love you got from fans and media and players before you guys parted ways there?
Well, it was, nobody likes to get fired, and I don't think there's a coach alive that gets out of the game almost the right way, where you get to retire, unless you're Al Arbor or Scotty. You know, usually it ends up bad for somebody. But I mean, that night, I mean, was one of the more incredible nights of my life. If you're going to get fired, this was the way to get fired.
Yeah.
You knew it's coming. I mean, I knew it was coming for 3 months and just kept, they wouldn't tell me. As a matter of fact, I asked that morning, I said, "Can you tell me guys what's going on?" And they still wouldn't tell me what was going on, but I knew what was happening. And so I told the players, I said, "This is our last game together." And the players were great. The players stayed on the ice and wouldn't go off until the crowd stopped cheering, and which, you know, like a pretty emotional time. But I mean, and the great thing that I'll probably take to my grave that I didn't even understand at that moment is when I'm addressing, you never get a chance to address the players when you're let go. Usually you'll be called into the office after practice or on a day off or something, and you don't get to address the players as a group. And I did, and we all started crying in the room. It was crazy. Like, I mean, I'm not just saying sobbing. I mean, there was guys that would come up or put their arm around me and were crying like they had lost their father or something. And it was so touching. Like, I mean, it's probably one of the greatest memories I'll ever have on one of the worst situations that I ever went through.
Well, it speaks to you as a person, and speaks to your character and how much respect your players have for you. I know I coached against you, and I had a tremendous amount of respect for you, Bruce, because of the way you carried yourself and your passion for the game, and you did things right. And coming on with us, we're so appreciative. You have no idea how appreciative we are, and thank you so much. It means a lot to both of us.
Thanks, Coach.
You know what? Thanks for having me on, first of all. Secondly, I wish I was better on this computer phone thing. I mean,
No worries.
If we had a typewriter, I could use typewriters better than I could use computers. I can tell you that much right now.
There you go. What's the writer's name in Slapshot, Bruce? I forget.
Ricky Dunn.
Ricky Dunn. There we go.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
All right. Good show. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Bruce
Coach.
Boudreau joining us here. Be sure to check him out on the NHL Network tonight, and he's on there frequently, so check him out there. And hopefully behind an NHL bench soon again, Pierre. I think.
Yeah. No, I mean,
like Bruce.
Sometimes you get done dirty. And
yeah.
You know, I'm really happy for Rick Tocchet, who's one of my favorite players I ever had the privilege of coaching, and I'm thrilled to death for Sergei Gonchar, who I have so much respect for. But Bruce was there, and, you know, stuff didn't work out. It just didn't work out. And you can see where the team is. The team's pretty darn good right now. Yep. So, anyways, the one thing, and he said it best, outside of Scotty and Al Arbor, there are not a lot of guys that get the pick when they leave.
Scotty had that line to you. What did he say? He said,
all coaches are interim.
Yeah, exactly. We're all interim. Don't ever forget it.
I'll never forget. It was his press conference in Pittsburgh in 1991. We had just won the Cup. Badger Bob was obviously very ill. He had brain cancer, terminal brain cancer. And I remember Scotty doing the press conference and saying, yep, we're all interim. And the writer was like, whoa, that's pretty strong. But it was true. It's true. It's very true.
It's true. And, you know, look, one thing I love about Bruce, like you said it numerous times to him there, is his passion for the game. And, you know, I think, Pierre, you're in and around the game like me. And one of my favorite things about being part of this and getting to do the job I do is meeting people like him who they just breathe the game. Like, it's like they speak and it just comes right out, you know, their love for the game, their love for life. And it's inspiring because, I mean, we all go through our ups and downs, and, you know, people like him who just never give up and they just keep following that dream and they enjoy every second that they can. I mean, that's what we need, not just in the game, in life, Pierre. I think it's great as a life lesson as well to see a guy like Bruce Boudreau.
Well, he's a lifer. He's a hockey lifer.
Yep.
What I remember, you know, just so you understand, that Southern Corridor back in the day, Shedden was in Lafayette, Louisiana. I was in Baton Rouge. Boudreau was in Mississippi. Eddie Johnstone, who used to play for the New York Rangers, was in Mobile, Alabama. And there was a guy by the name of Bruce Cassidy who was in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yep.
And it was amazing. Terry Christensen was coaching in Pensacola. He was a longtime coach at Michigan State for Ron Mason. I mean, it was a murderer's row of coaches back then. It really was. And I can tell you, like, again, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and Mississippi, if you were into the physical stuff, that there was no nights off, Jimmy. And it was amazing. The players would get mad at one another, and sometimes during the game, the coaches would say stuff under their breath, you know, whether it was Shedden or me or Boudreau. But when it was all said and done, we still could look at each other because we were all going through the same stuff. And you know, or whatever, you could still talk and still be civil.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I think I told you the story once, because this is one I don't really get mad at too much. One of the things that's kind of irksome to me now in the NHL is the disconnect between coaching staffs. You know, it's like verboten. You're not allowed to talk to the other guy. Well, you know, Bruce brought up Al Arbor. When I was a young coach, head coach in the league, the trainer from the Islanders would come down, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I said, "Not much." Why? He says, "Al would love to have a cup of coffee with you and smoke a cigarette." Well, I didn't smoke, but I'd go down to Al Arbor's office before the game. This is before the game. And we wouldn't even talk hockey. He'd say, "Hey, when's the last time you talked to Scotty?" Or "How's your family doing?" anything going wrong? How's your health? Like, he was amazing.
That's
He was
awesome.
amazing. You know what I'm saying? He said, "Hey, you're tight with one of my good friends from St. Louis." I go, "Who's that?" He goes, "Jimmy Roberts." I said, "Yeah, I'm really tight. I talk to him every day." He goes, "Oh, I know." And this is before cell phone. So back then there was this civility and ability to talk amongst the fraternity. Now all they do is they do it at the end of the year and they make it look good at the coaches'
I was
conference.
just going to say they still have that. Yeah.
And I don't know. I remember like that foray into the East Coast League for me was great because look at all those coaches I just brought up. Like, that was a row of coaches. Shedden's still coaching in Europe. Boudreau's going to go back and coach. Cassidy just won the Stanley Cup in Vegas. I mean, we're all knocking heads against each other. It was pretty amazing.
That's great. So is Sneddon any relation to the one that coached in Vermont, Pierre?
No, different spelling.
Different people. Okay, different spelling. All
Pat
right.
Shedden, that coach at Vermont, played at Harvard, and his first real opportunity was at Union College, and then he moved up to Vermont.
Gotcha. Yeah, I confused him there. All right. What do you think, Pierre? Time for a couple here or what?
Always. We got
to take a few.
Before we get to the questions,
yep.
We got to be transparent with our audience. What did we talk about before? How much we appreciate the professionalism of the questions and dealing with our audience. It's one of the things I look forward to every day. I really do. I look forward to interacting with our audience.
And you know what I love, and we've got one now, is when you guys send us these video questions, like Shane has done, and Evan, and so I think we got one right now, guys. Can we play that one I sent you earlier that Evan sent us? I don't know if we have it.
We don't have it. Okay, that's fine.
That's okay. That's all right. If they do, no, they don't have it. All right, we'll get it tomorrow. I'll get it to you. I promise. But let's go to some questions that we got right now in the chat room. This is a question this from Alex Evanovsky. Question for whoever. What team do you think was Bruce's best chance to win the Cup? The Caps 2009, Caps 2010, or the 2015 Anaheim Ducks? Pierre, before you get to, I'm just going to say 2010. And like they did so many times to the Boston Bruins, the Montreal Canadiens screwed it up.
I'm going to say the 2010 team. I did every single game in that series. Washington had a significant lead. And then Yaro Spacek started blocking shots and driving Ovechkin nuts. And Roman Hamrlik started driving some of the Washington Capitals forwards nuts. And then Montreal had some amazing performances by certain guys, especially Mike Camilleri. So I'm going to say that team, but there's no way Washington should have lost to that team, but they did. And it was too bad. It was just too bad.
Yep. All right, let's go. Next question. Do we think Alex Ovechkin ends his career in Washington, or could we see him play on a different team? Funny, Pierre, so I noticed this question as coach, you guys were talking about Alex, right? And we were talking about Sid and all that. And then as I'm reading that question, and the first thing that came in I don't really think it would happen, but if it did, the one city that always came in my mind was Montreal. And a few seconds later, coach goes, where he always played well was Montreal. And that's exactly why. Yeah. For some reason, he lit up when he would go to Montreal. He just loves playing in front of those fans. I think it would be one heck of a relationship between him and the fans at the Bell Center if they can make that happen. But I don't know, Pierre. I mean, I just can't see it.
You know what? I'm not going to speculate on it, but here's what I will say. It would be an amazing thing for the fans in Montreal if they ever had a player like that for a short period of time. I think it would be wild.
Oh my gosh. And they embrace Russians. I mean, I know he was a crapshoot. They loved Kovalev. They
had no problem with that. Look at Andrei Markov. They loved Andrei Markov there. I mean, no, there's not a problem with that in Montreal. No chance.
All right, we got a couple more here. And Evan, I promise we're going to get you yours tomorrow. Oh, here is Evan with another one. Evan McLaren, I wonder what Bruce would do to fix the power play in Pittsburgh. Man, imagine if coach Sid and Ovi in his career.
But I'll tell you what he would do. The same thing he did in Washington. What they did was everything went through Nicholas Backstrom's stick on the power play there. And that's what set everything up for John Carlson, for Ovechkin. And a great question, by the way, Evan. And I've said this a million times on Pittsburgh radio, and I've talked to people that are involved with it. And I said, you got to turn Sid Crosby into Nick Backstrom. Everything's got to go through Sid's stick. And until you do that, you're going to have a problem because you're expecting Letang and or Carlson to run it up high, and everybody knows that, and they're overplaying those guys, and it's causing problems. So get everything through Sid's stick, and it would change the power play significantly in Pittsburgh. Significantly.
We got time for 2 more here, and then I got to get on the road. I got
a question. And this is important. Bruce was in charge of the power play there, but he had a guy by the name of Blaine Forsyth, who's now working in Arizona. And Blaine was, and I hope somebody gets this to Blaine, he was letter perfect on the power play. And you look at Arizona's power play, it's pretty good right now. But in Washington, they were always third, second, or first in the power play when he was there. And I know Bruce was part of it, but so was Blaine Forsyth, just so we're clear.
Good man. And we'll take 2 more here. What do we got? Randy Workman, I hate this offside reviews on goals. Is there a way we can do anything to improve this? Yeah, Randy.
There is.
You know, I'm giving the old, was it Roger Nielsen with the white towel? Sorry, I don't know how to do it.
Towel. So here's my thought, and I've been saying it for 5 years, Randy, and maybe some people say you're just stupid and you don't know what you're talking about. Once the puck breaks the plane on the top of the blue line, everything's onside. It's not the puck has to cross the blue line. Once the puck touches the top of the plane of the blue line, everything's onside. Think about how minuscule some of those are, but the puck's already in the blue. It's just not over the blue. So my point is, if you just did that and players were aware of that, I think you would get rid of all this nonsense, all of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll see. It's definitely going to be something, again, they look at in the off season. I hope they can fix it. Well, listen, we're all set for today, guys. I actually got a dinner date with my daughter, Maddie Pierre. Looking forward to that. I know she's watching, so hello, Maddie.
Hey, Maddie.
Yep, she's loving this, and I'm glad we got so many viewers here. And guys, we appreciate your questions, like we said. And what an interview that was, Pierre. Like I said, he's inspired me. Every once in a while, you know, we need interviews like that where you just get a guy like, man, life is good. That's what you come away with when you talk to people like Bruce Boudreau.
Pretty amazing week so far in the old.
Oh, wow. And it's getting better.
John Shannon tomorrow. And I can tell you right now, I haven't been in the league for 3 decades. Not sure there's anybody that's been as closely tied in to the broadcast part, the management part, the business part, and the insider part than John Shannon. I'm telling you, like, he's been all over the place as a broadcaster, as a producer, working on the American side, working on the team side, working on the Canadian side, working on Hockey Night in Canada, working as a podcast. I mean, he's done it all, and he is a tremendous hockey person. He really is.
And that says a lot, considering how much broadcasting, you know, how far it's come here over the last 20 years or so. I know. I mean, I got to know him a bit when I did some stuff for NHL.com. He's a great man, and he's just such a brilliant mind.
Yeah, his mind is brilliant. That's a good description. I agree.
The league is a better place for it because of John Shannon. So I look forward to that interview tomorrow, and we'll talk about the NHL All-Star Game being in Toronto and, you know, sort of what that means for that area, Pierre, because, I mean, our Montreal crowd will not like to hear it, but they are one of the hockey meccas of the world, and you know, it's good to see All-Star Weekend in a Canadian market because, Pierre, you were at the ones in Montreal, and you've been to some other Canadian markets, but still to this day, the Montreal one was great back in, I think it was 2009 when they did their centennial. That was something, and it's great to see it in a market that's so passionate about the game. So looking forward to hearing some stuff about that. And
before you go, you're talking about great hockey markets. I'm not letting you off the hook because our Friday guest lives in Grand Forks, Dakota, and you want to talk about great hockey markets. You go to Ralph Engelstad Arena in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where I've been many, many times, sometimes warm, mostly cold to get in. We're having Brad Berry on, the coach of University of North Dakota. He's been there 9 years as a head coach. He played there as a player. He was an assistant coach. He's a phenomenal hockey person. I did a lot of business with him a few years ago when Ottawa owned Jake Sanderson and owned Tyler Clevin. And, you know, just totally upboard, totally honest. you know, it's never easy to go in and tell a coach, hey, we want to take your players out of your program, you know, and Brad met me and we talked. It was really he's such a professional man. No ill will, no hard feelings. At least he never voiced those to me. And he lost a player in Sanderson as a sophomore that, you know, I think if he stays another year, he might have won the Hobie Baker. And Clevin actually stayed an extra year. He's playing in Belleville in the American League right now. But both those guys, Brad couldn't have been more accommodating. And every day that I spent with him, I learned something new, and I appreciated his professionalism.
Look forward to that.
Really good guy. And a great, by the way, that's where my father's from. And, you know, we just –
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, our family farm was sold, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. It was a little bit north of Grand Forks. But my grandfather, I think, was in one of the first graduating classes from the University of North Dakota. And I know my 2 aunts, Oral and Merle, I think were in the first female graduating class from the University of North Dakota.
Oh, wow.
So I've got a lot of respect for the community, and I've never had a bad trip there, ever.
It's one of those barns I got to get to. But, you know, Pierre, you bring up a thing there we'll talk about another time. I think it's a great aspect to ask you about is what it is like when a coach and a team have to meet and discuss that uncomfortable situation where, hey, we think he's ready. What do we got to do to get him out of here? So I think that would be a great thing to talk about for our viewers.
You know, what I'd like to do is maybe, I think what I'll try to do, we'll do that, and I'll get a player that's actually done it.
Okay, cool.
That would be awesome. He went through, and I've got a few guys in mind. Are high-profile players, really good players in college, but left early, and what that whole thing was like for them when they're watching maybe their former teammates in college winning championships, or maybe not doing well, and them doing better, you know. So I'll try to. I've got a few guys in mind that I think will be
good stuff.
So
all right,
thank you about you, Jimmy.
Yep, I look forward to that. All right, well, listen, another great edition. Thanks to Bruce Boudreau. Thanks to our production staff as well. Thanks to you, the viewers and the listeners. We appreciate it. For Pierre McGuire, I'm Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.